Hey there, mama friend, and welcome to the 5-Minute Mom Podcast, where we'll talk about real life, real faith, real fast. For today's show notes or to get free Monday Mom devotionals, visit audrahaney.com. Well, hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. Last week I shared a little bit of my own waiting story and the waiting seasons that God has had me in. And this week we are answering the first question on waiting, which is, why do we wait? Why does God put us through intentional waiting seasons? And what is He trying to accomplish? So I want to look at a familiar story to kind of address the question of why. The first is in Exodus 14, 1 through 4, and then we'll go back a little bit to Exodus 13 after that. In Exodus 1 through 4, it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi-hahiroth between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal-zephon. Pharaoh will think, the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am Lord." So the Israelites did this. Now let's go back to Exodus 13, 17 through 18. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though it was shorter. For God said if they faced war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt ready for battle. I will put the references to the scriptures in the show notes, but we see two things from these passages. Waiting is a stage to showcase God's glory, and it strengthens us. We see that God did two intentional things here. God had them camp out on purpose, and He takes them the long way to the promised land. You know, I know some of us grew up with the Ten Commandments movie, but for so long before reading this passage really carefully, I had this mental image that the Israelites were fleeing from Egypt and Pharaoh and his chariots just caught up to them. And then panic and in desperation, God had to part the Red Sea so they could get away from them. But we see here that that was not God's plan. He had a plan for them to camp out. He had a plan for their intentional waiting. And He was in that moment purposely having them wait so He could give them a testimony. And that testimony of God parting the Red Sea was later a pillar in how He established their nation, both in the way they remembered the faithfulness and power of God and how other nations saw the power of their God. Can you imagine the Hebrew people without a Red Sea moment? Now, we know that if they had to walk 1 mile a day, they could have made their journey to the Promised Land in 9 months. But the opening of the Red Sea is followed by 40 years of wandering. And we know in this that God took them the long way because He knew they were not ready for battle. And He also took them the long way to purify their hearts and their worship and to build their faith. What they needed for their battles was a strong faith. And through these times of wondering and waiting, God can purify our worship and refocus us on our worship of Him and Him alone, that He is truly all we need and He is truly the only one worthy of our worship. We have to trust God because the right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. God knows what's ahead, and He knows our motives. He knows the tools and the weapons we may need for the next season. You know, I had an answer to a prayer that I've waited for 10 years, and a project that I've been working on for 10 years that just this year came to fruition. And I can now see that I did not have what I needed for this project until this exact year. When you wait, God is showing His glory, His power, His might, and He is giving you a testimony. And He is giving you every tool you need. He is purifying your heart. He is teaching you how to worship. Friend, if you rush in any season, if you shortcut any season, you are forfeiting something so important to your calling. Camp out where God has placed you for His glory and for your good. So that's the end of our 5 minutes. Please tune in again soon. If you want to learn more about me or sign up for the podcast newsletter or get a free devotional, visit audrahaney.com. And if you enjoyed this, would you please leave a quick review? Reviews are so important for podcasters, and it helps more moms find us, and it would be a great blessing.